Hello, everybody. In this video, we're going to look at the difference between bigger breakfasts and smaller breakfasts, and even bigger dinners and smaller dinners, and everything in between, and how they influence metabolism and insulin and blood sugars, etc. This kind of goes hand with, well, this is an age old question, and it goes hand in hand with the question around should I eat earlier in the day or later in the day? And I will do another video on that soon, but I have lots of content on that in my Facebook biohacking group and on my business pages on Instagram and Facebook and podcasts. But I'll do a more summarized video soon on this. But a lot of people, I think, are going to be super interested in the findings of these studies that I'm going to cite. So, these studies, and I will share everything in the description, but the studies we're looking at today, and we could get granular around breakfast and how it influences thyroid and adrenals, but we're just going to stay around how it affects the general population and what the research tells us. So, these studies, by the way, that we're looking at or that I'm referencing, they are randomized control trials, which is the gold standard for studies. And the studies look at bigger breakfast versus smaller breakfast, and even bigger breakfast and smaller dinner, and how that affects fat loss and blood sugars and hunger. Calories are kept the same for each group as well. So, the first study that we're looking at, and the title of that is Twice as High Diet Induced Thermogenesis After Breakfast versus Dinner on High Calorie as well as Low Calorie Meals. So, this first study showing us that looking at big breakfast versus small breakfast in terms of their effect on diet induced thermogenesis. And thermogenesis is how a specific food or meal influences your metabolism. So it's how much energy it takes to digest and process. So meals can increase your metabolism. So this study looked at how big breakfast versus small breakfast influenced thermogenesis. So that change in metabolism. And the study found that regardless of whether people ate low calorie or high calorie meals at breakfast compared to dinner, people generally burned 2.5 times more calories after breakfast than after dinner, regardless of the size. It did not vary statistically between a bigger breakfast or a smaller breakfast or a bigger dinner versus smaller. It just came across the board that we tend to have more diet induced thermogenesis in the mornings after breakfast compared to dinner. And I believe part of this is due to increased insulin resistance as the day goes on, which most of us experience, but also exhaustion and fatigue at the end of the day, and how this influences metabolism. And even inflammation tends to be higher in people towards the end of the day, and that will influence metabolism. What they also saw that regardless of the size of your breakfast, we do burn more calories in the morning compared to the evening, but they found that eating a bigger meal at breakfast led to less of a blood sugar rise than eating the same meal at dinner, looping back around to that insulin resistance being higher in the evening. So, what they found was for a low calorie meal, they saw a 17% increase in blood sugar when that meal was had at dinner instead of breakfast. Then, for a high calorie meal, they saw there was a 44% increase in blood sugar when that meal was had at dinner instead of breakfast. So, from a baseline, blood sugar response at breakfast for a low calorie meal, that increased by 17% by just having that meal at dinner. And if it was a high calorie meal from the baseline at breakfast, it increased by 44% by having it at dinner. These are big changes, and it's quite significant. And they saw the same effect on insulin. This all parameters here are quite significant, especially when fat loss is desired. So the study did show that eating more calories earlier in the day is better for metabolism, blood sugars, and insulin. It is in the comments or the description, but I'll also post the original study as well by the academic group. So then there was another study that had everyone consume the same pre-meal to get a baseline, so they knew where they were starting. Excuse me, and then have them all wait 8 hours and then either eat a breakfast meal or a dinner meal, and then they lay down for 6 hours. So they replicated the conditions between an early day meal and a late day meal. And the name of this study is the timing of caloric intake associated with variation in diet induced thermogenesis and in the metabolic pattern, a randomized study. So in this one, what they found was the same. They found the same effects on thermogenesis, blood sugar, and insulin resistance. Um, then there was another interesting point made that regardless of calorie count, people felt more satiated throughout the day with a bigger breakfast. A low calorie breakfast made people feel even more hungry than before they had ate. And I know a lot of my clients will feel validated here. A lot of people, if they don't eat enough at breakfast, they probably would have been just better off not having breakfast. They can feel hungrier, and that can then lead to overeating and cravings later in the day. So it's important that you're getting a good breakfast in. And again, not getting granular about thyroid, the adrenals. This is purely for the general population. And they didn't get too granular in the research. So for people in general, that when they have breakfast, especially if it's bigger breakfast, we're seeing an increase in metabolism and improvement in blood sugar and insulin. Um, so these people were more satiated after a bigger breakfast. They felt hungrier after a smaller breakfast. And then they also found that a low calorie dinner, which is interesting because not a lot of people would even consider this, although this is how I teach. A low calorie dinner was more satiating and got people through to breakfast easier. And this is more than likely because of that insulin resistance in the evening and that blood sugar response. That if you do eat an imbalanced meal at dinner or it's too big, because your digestion has slowed down later in the day and you're more insulin resistant, that's going to influence blood sugars more. Even though you had a bigger meal, it can cause you to then overeat or feel like you need something sweet after dinner. So the research is showing us that the combination of a bigger breakfast and a smaller dinner, it seems to be better at reducing hunger throughout the day, and thus this can be beneficial for weight loss as well. So how does this actually relate to weight loss? Like, is there research? Well, the answer is yes. There was another big study, and this one was titled High Caloric Intake at Breakfast versus Dinner Differentially Influences Weight Loss of Overweight and Obese Women. And what this study was 100 people, and they had one of two diets to be done over 12 weeks. One of the diets was a big breakfast. They had 700 calories at breakfast. They had 500 calories at lunch and 200 calories at dinner. And I know a lot of you are saying, whoa, that's a small dinner. Yes, it is. The other diet had a big dinner. So they basically flipped the calories. The lunch stayed the same. Then breakfast was 200 calories and dinner was 700 calories. So the calories matched both groups each day. They just varied per meal apart from lunch. They also were in a calorie deficit. So the researchers did expect there to be some sort of weight loss involved here. But they kind of wanted to get a bit more granular on how it would affect other metabolic parameters and biomarkers. So the breakfast, the big that those that had the results showed that those that had A big dinner and a small breakfast. Over 3 months, they lost 8 pounds, which is nothing to cock your nose up at. A lot of people would love to lose 8 pounds. It's still a nice loss. But what they did find was that the group that had a bigger breakfast and a smaller dinner, they lost 20 pounds over 3 months. That is almost 3 times. That is quite significant. That is a big difference, but they didn't only find that. They also found improved blood sugars, insulin, and triglycerides. The ghrelin, the hunger hormone, was also lower in the group that lost the more weight with the bigger breakfasts. Ghrelin, obviously, we want to be satiated for longer. We don't want to be overeating. So we want this hormone to be functioning properly. And ghrelin is directly connected to fat burning at nighttime when we sleep. They also saw that the leptin levels were higher. Now, leptin is our satiety hormone, and we want our leptin levels to be balanced because leptin is directly connected to body fat set point and rebound weight gain. So, in all, the research shows us that not only was there improved metabolism and blood sugars, insulin, triglycerides, the participants were also more satiated and less hungry, therefore contributing to better weight loss and results, but also potentially helping with that body fat set point and future rebound weight gain. So, super interesting. The research is obviously there. We can see the winner here is that having a bigger breakfast is going to be more beneficial than a smaller one, but also having a smaller dinner is going to be more beneficial than having a bigger one. So, I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you found this educational and insightful. I know a lot of my clients already knew this and they were already practicing this. I appreciate your support on these videos and even my podcast so much because they actually do take a lot of time, especially where studies and research is involved. And I don't monetize any of my videos or podcasts. So if you would like to see me continue making them and you'd like to help me to keep doing that, it would really mean a lot to me if you would buy me a coffee. And I can share the link in the comments. Otherwise, I hope you found this really helpful and insightful. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments, and I will respond as soon as possible. Have a great day, everyone. Bye.